Don't do that. If you think about it, if you study an extra 2 hours the night before the exam, maybe one question will be in those 2 hours, maybe.
I think the right exam technique, the right time management technique plays a crucial role in a student passing the exam or failing by that 1 mark really.
If you make a schedule and you say, I'm going to study Monday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday, then on Wednesday night, you know it's not time to study. And you can go out with your friends.
And now I'm going to go to the part which the students, I think, most fear about, the essay type question.
We don't want any of our essay answers to be perfect. Sleep as much as possible. And I say, when you're the night before the exam, 1 more hour of sleep is more beneficial than 1 more hour of study.
That's a great insight coming in from you really, for all the students out there who are looking for the best strategy to handle the MCQ parts in the US CMA exam. Hello everyone and welcome to this podcast series by the Wall Street School. Today I have an esteemed guest with me, Mr. Brian Hock, all the way from the US to guide you regarding your US CMA journey and the best tips and tricks to prepare for your upcoming exam. Welcome to the podcast, Brian.
Thank you very much.
It's an absolute honor to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Perfect. And especially on this momentous occasion when Hock has literally completed 25 years of being in the industry and being one of the industry leaders as far as it comes to the content for your US CMA preparation.
It's been 25 years since we've been doing this, and so it's been a lot of fun, and we've helped a lot of students along the way. And
absolutely.
We look forward to another 25 years.
Many more to go, not just only 25.
Yeah.
So I think, Brian, one of the major questions, and the concerns that students literally have towards their exam preparation is where most of our discussion today is going to draw around. But we'll start with the basics in terms of why do you reckon that, there is so much of surge in demand for US CMA qualification, specifically in India?
Well, I think, to me, it all comes down to the fact that the content that's tested on the CMA exam is real. It's practical. It's what businesses either do, or if they're not doing it, they should be doing it.
Absolutely.
And so when a student is studying any topic in the CMA exam, they're actually practicing and getting the knowledge that they need to work. There's no topics that they're not going to use. There's no topics that a company doesn't do. And so the CMA exam takes a lot of very, very good content and squeezes it into 2 exams. 2 big exams that cover a lot of content, but it's practical, it's relevant, and it provides the candidates with the knowledge that they need to be successful on the job. Whether it's their first job, they've been working for a little while, it gives that knowledge and skills they need to add value at work.
I think that's a very well put answer because you've literally laid down the fact that yes, this particular qualification gives you the skills that jobs in today's industry requires. So it's a forward-thinking qualification, something that, adds a lot of practical skills, something that the employers value down the line.
Well, and I know a lot of candidates ask, will I get a job? If I pass CMA, will I get a job? And the answer to that question is yes, but it's actually the wrong question. The question that candidates need to be asking is, will this certification give me what I need to be successful in the job? Getting the job, that's nice, but that's not the goal.
Yes, and that's not sufficient as well. I mean, you could get a job just by a basic graduation as well.
We want to be successful in the job. We want to get promoted. We want to have new opportunities and new options as we go through our career. And by being practical, those are the tools that the candidates need to go into work, add value, be successful, get promoted, get new opportunities, new places. And so it's not just getting a job. It's being successful in the job that they need to have the skills to do that.
Very perfectly put, Brian. Thank you so much for that answer. And I think that is the value that a professional qualification like US CMA actually, adds.
Right.
Wonderful. So coming down to my next question, why? What would be the, key USPs that you would identify for US CMA material, which is like Hock?
Well, obviously we've been doing it for 25 years, and so we've perfected it and keep working on it. We keep working all the time to make it better. But what we try to do with our material is not only the base level of knowledge to pass the exam, but we want to make certain that the candidate understands the content. So after the exam, when they go out to work, they're able to take those concepts from the exam, apply them at work, add value, get promoted, and all of those wonderful things that follow. And so our perspective in the writing of the material isn't just passing the exam, but that next step as well when you need to go and use the exam. And also, kind of a different direction, our material is generally considered to be a little bit more complete because we provide more of a foundation level discussion for all of the topics, because even if somebody comes into their preparation with it being an expert in budgeting, they spent the last 3 years doing budgeting for a company, they're not going to be an expert in every area that's covered on the CMA exam. And so even if you have that budgeting expertise, you don't have the costing expertise, or you don't have the experience with internal controls. And so we want to make certain in the material that we don't assume that the candidate already knows everything or knows that foundation. So we include that in the material. And so we lay a great foundation, make certain that the candidate has that foundational knowledge. Then we build on that to pass the exam and go into work and be successful with what it is that they've learned.
Wonderful. And I think that's a very key area again, because the entire qualification is built around the 12 core competencies. So regardless of whether you have some brought forward knowledge or not, the curriculum, if it is solid, if it is complete, if it is wholesome, that adds a lot of confidence to the student giving the exam.
And that word is important, confident.
Yes, absolutely.
We want candidates to go into the exam comfortable and confident in what they know. Now, I understand that not every candidate walks out of the exam confident that they passed. But if the candidate has prepared, they've done what they need to, I find that those candidates that have put in the time and done a serious job preparing, they know more than they think they do. It's just that when they're studying at the end, they focus on all the things they don't know. Well, the few things they don't know, the questions that they got wrong on the mock exam, instead of focusing on all of the things that they do know. And so solid preparation is going to let a candidate go into the exam with confidence, and even if they don't come out with as much confidence, but they'll be ready to pass their exam.
Wonderful. And I think there is no substitute for hard work, obviously. No. You have to put in the time, energy, effort that the qualification is going to require for you to pass. Yeah. Having done that, if you have this right study material, you have the right resources, you have the right mentor to guide you, that also adds a lot of confidence to head into the exam, I feel.
Absolutely. And it's a combination. You have good materials, good teachers at the Wall Street School that support the questions being answered.
Absolutely.
A candidate has all of the resources that they need to pass the exam. Yes. It's up to the candidate to use those resources.
Yes, I think it's the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that has to be right in the first place. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that answer. Very basic question, coming in from a student's perspective. On the top, like on overall, what do you put, preview of the qualification? Is it something which is an easy qualification to pass, or would you call it a difficult qualification?
It's a challenging certification, and that's good.
Yes, absolutely.
If it was easy, it wouldn't have any value.
Yes.
And so it's challenging, but the key is to keep in mind that it is passable. If you prepare, if you put in that effort, you spend the time, you do the reading, you ask questions, you answer questions, you can go into your exam absolutely confident and ready to pass. We need to keep in mind when we look at pass rates and the statistics that there's a lot of candidates that register. Maybe they study a little bit or they don't study at all, and then they go take the exam. Those candidates have no chance.
Absolutely.
You can't just show up and pass the exam. So if we were to look at the candidates who prepare properly, their pass rate is very good. And the good news for a candidate is whether or not that candidate prepares properly is entirely their choice. If you're studying with the Wall Street School, you have the classes, you have the instructors, you have the support, you have the materials. It's just a question of whether or not you choose to use them.
It or not.
If you don't come to class, if you don't come to class, you're not going to pass.
Absolutely.
If you don't read the book, you're not going to pass. If you don't do the practice questions, you're not going to pass. And so a lot of those candidates who fail, they kind of knew they were going to fail.
Exactly.
They should have expected that.
Absolutely. I think, again, you've put in a very valid point, and I always go and say back to the students that you know how much effort you've literally put in. All the resources were already available.
Yeah.
If you've not utilized those resources, the entire ecosystem fails.
Yeah.
I cannot go and give the exam on your behalf. Well, it's as simple as that.
And that's each candidate's choice.
Absolutely.
To study in the evening, on the weekends, to do what they need to. And so, like I said, the resources are all there. It's just a choice as to whether or not each individual candidate is going to choose to do that. And one of the ways that we can kind of see is if a candidate comes into CMA and their attitude is, I want to pass.
Okay.
This is my goal. This is what I'm going to do this year. They'll pass. If they come in with, well, you know, it'd be nice. I hope I pass. If I pass, that would be a good thing. If it's not a need.
Right. I think that commitment is the calling, basically.
And that's that need, that commitment is what will help you study.
Absolutely.
Every night or every weekend, whatever the case is. And so students know. They may not admit it, but they know as they're going
down,
through.
They know that whatever efforts.
Whether or not they've been studying properly or not.
True that. Next question, again, I think very basic question, just to address, a lot of queries that our students have. What would be the best study pedagogy or, the study tips that you would offer to somebody who's preparing for a US CMA exam?
The first thing, and I know this has nothing to do with the actual process of studying, but make a study plan, a study schedule. What day of the week and what time are you going to study?
Brings in a lot of discipline, I feel.
Well, and what it does is it's actually, you make the study schedule not for the time you're studying, you make it for the time you're not studying.
Right.
Because once you decide, I'm going to take CMA, on one hand, you no longer have the question of free time. Every day when you wake up, you could study.
Right.
You come home from work, you come home from class, you could study.
Choice is entirely yours.
It's always there. But if you make a schedule and you say, I'm going to study Monday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night, then on Wednesday night, you know it's not time to study.
Right.
And you can go out with your friends, you can go to the cricket match, whatever the case may be, and not feel guilty.
Right.
Because you know this is when I'm going to study, this is when I'm not going to study. And so if you make that schedule of when you're going to study during the week, everything becomes much easier for you. And then every time you sit down to study, okay, if you're in class, that's great, you go to class. But when you're studying by yourself, every time you sit down to study, make a realistic plan for that study session. If you sit down and you say, I have 30 minutes, I have an hour, whatever time period you have, make a plan of what you want to accomplish in that time you have.
And a realistic plan.
A realistic plan. If you have 30 minutes, don't sit down and say, I'm going to do 100 MCQs.
Right.
You're not.
Yes.
You can do 15.
Yes.
If you have an hour, you can read a little bit of the book, you can do some questions. But when you sit down to study, write down what you are going to do in the time that you have. So make a study schedule of when you're going to study, and then every time you study, make certain you know what it is you want to do in that time that you're studying.
I think realizable small goals will help you achieve that ultimate big goal that you have.
Absolutely. And part of it is no individual topic on CMA is so difficult we don't understand it. One of the challenges is that section A, B, C, D, E, F, you have to remember all of it.
Yes.
And so having that structure to when you study and what you study each time you study is what enables you to go through all of that large amount of material in a manner that doesn't miss anything.
Right.
Structured, logical, and that ultimately is what's going to be effective.
Perfect. Very well answered, Hock. Brian, thank you so much for that. Next question would be again, how do you reckon that, the Hock Pass Map facility which is available, which I feel is a very good feature of Hock content. How do you make, how do you think that students can make the best utilization out of it?
Well, there's a couple of tools in it that I think a lot of students either don't use or don't know about. And one of them is you can go in and put in your exam date. And when you put in your exam date, it'll tell you how many hours you need to study a week. It'll tell you what topics you need to study. Now, part of that is I know that when they're studying with you, they have a schedule and they have that guidance. But part of that, having a date is important. You know what you need to study.
Absolutely.
You have a deadline. You have a time frame. And so putting that target date into the system is important. The other thing that I think is a very useful study tool for students is the online textbook. And with the online textbook, and we have a video that shows how this is able to be done, but you can highlight, underline, make notes in it. And then you can sort by all of that. And so you can underline in red or highlight in red, highlight in yellow, and then you can sort show me everything I highlighted in red.
So a lot of personalization is available.
It's incredibly personal. And so what I recommend is kind of a starting point is if you're reading through the book and there's something you don't understand, highlight it in red.
Absolutely.
If there's something that you kind of understand, highlight it in yellow. And then when you do a review session, you can go into the textbook and say, show me all of my red highlights. And that tells you everything you need to remember. And we used to do this in a hard copy book.
Yes, absolutely.
But in a hard copy book,
when I was in school, I used to put all these different colored highlighters on my books.
Post-it notes. But then you have to flip every page through the book to find it. With the online book, you say, show me everything that's red. And it takes you one by one through all the topics, all the things that you wanted to study again. If you understand it, delete the red highlight, and now you don't have to review it anymore. And so it's just a way that you have the entire book with you, all of your notes, and you don't have to carry the book. You are at home, you're at work, it's on your computer, you're traveling, it's on your phone, it's on your tablet, it's all there. And it essentially becomes your own personal study notes.
Absolutely.
In terms of what you don't understand, what you do understand, questions that you have, all of that is all right there, kept nice and neat, and a great tool to identify what you need to review, and then a way to go ahead and review it.
I think that's very progressive. As a content provider, as an LMS, these are very key functionalities that students need to know and make the best utilization of. Wonderful. So let's come down to the next question, which again is a very basic question coming down from the students, is that what according to you would be the best strategy to handle the multiple choice questions?
Well, the multiple choice questions, there's one key thing to keep in mind, and I'll then give what it means. The thing to keep in mind is that on the exam, every multiple choice question is equal.
Absolutely.
So the little question that says assets equals liabilities plus, if you get that question correct, it's +1. Then if you have a question that asks you to calculate the diluted earnings per share, and it takes you 7 minutes to do that, that question is also
just giving you
+1.
that 1 mark.
So what we need to do as a candidate is make certain that we answer all the questions that we know.
Absolutely.
All the easy questions. And so if you're going through and you get to question number 7 and you see it's got 2 paragraphs of information, the first thing you do is don't read all the information, read what the question is. What is it asking you to do? And for example, it's asking you to calculate diluted earnings per share. And you sit there and you think, I never really liked diluted earnings per share. That was never my best topic. So what you could do is you could spend 10 minutes trying to go through it and dealing with the convertible preferred share and the convertible bond and is it dilutive, is it not dilutive. Spend 10 minutes, you get $3.15 and it's not one of the choices. So if there's a long question, if there's a question that you don't like, answer the question, A, B, C, D, then mark the question and move on.
Oh, so you have the option to flag the question.
So you flag the question, you mark the question. And so then if you get to the end of the exam, the end of the MCQs, and you still have 15 minutes,
absolutely,
then you can come back and try to calculate the earnings per share. But I know that when students say they run out of time, they run out of time by 5 minutes, by 10 minutes. Nobody says I needed another 2 hours. They wanted another few minutes. So we need to keep in mind that it's possible that questions 98, 99, and 100 are easy.
Right.
But if you spend too much time on question 7 and 53 and 82, you don't have time.
You lost on the easy marks in the exam.
You get to question 96, there's 1 minute left, so you say A at the end.
And that's it.
And those 3 questions, you didn't get a chance to answer them. So don't spend a lot of time on a question that's long or difficult or a topic that you don't like. Answer it, A, B, C, D. You have a 25% chance of getting it right. Mark the question and then move on. And at the end, if you have time, come back. But you want to make certain that you see every question and answer every question that's easy. Every question that you know, you want to be able to answer it.
I think the right exam technique, the right time management technique plays a crucial role in a student passing the exam
Right.
or failing by that 1 mark really.
And that's those last, that's questions 98, 99, and 100.
Absolutely.
You want to make certain that if those are easy questions, you answer those and you get those points.
Wonderful. That's a great insight coming in from you really, for all the students out there who are looking for the best strategy to handle the MCQ parts in the US CMA exam. And now I'm going to go to the part which the students I think, most fear about, the essay type questions.
Well, this is a question that we get a lot.
Yes.
And we shouldn't. This is not something to fear. And the reason is that students ask, how should I study for the essays?
Yes.
Okay, that's a question. Well, I read the book, I do the practice questions, I understand the concepts. Well, whenever you're preparing for the MCQs, you're also preparing for the essays.
For the essay.
It's a different structure to the question, but the content that's tested on the MCQs is exactly the same as the content that's tested on the essays. And most of the questions on the essays we could make into a multiple choice question.
Right.
And I'll give you a good example. Ratio analysis. Common structure to an essay is, here's the information, calculate. These 6 ratios, and then tell us what the company should do. Well, those 6 ratios that you have to calculate as an essay could easily be 6 multiple choice questions.
Right. So if you know your basics, I think you're sorted.
So if you know how to calculate the ratio for a multiple choice question, you know how to calculate the ratio for an essay. If you know how to calculate the weighted average cost of capital, if you know how to allocate overhead, if you know the segregation of duties for a multiple choice question, you know all of those same topics for
Right. I think it's
essays.
more of just application of the concepts that you've studied
and so
in the form of the essay.
People get nervous because you write down the answer and you don't know.
Yes.
But it's also important to remember that the way they grade the essay questions, you start with 0 points and you get points for everything you do correct.
Oh, wonderful.
So if it says, what are 3 things the company should do? And you can only think of 2. Well, you get 2 out of 3 points or whatever the allocation is. You want to make certain that you answer every requirement that they give, even if it's not the best answer,
right?
Even if it's not the fullest answer. Because just like if you leave a multiple choice question blank, you don't get any points.
Yes.
If you leave an essay question, you don't write anything, you get 0 points.
Yes,
They can't give you anything.
Basic probability, isn't it?
Right.
So if there are 5 subparts, at least answer all 5 subparts, even if not to 100% perfection,
right.
But something out of it, right?
Right. And also kind of similar to that is we don't want any of our essay answers to be perfect.
Right.
And for example, and this would not actually be an essay, but let's pretend it said prepare a balance sheet. And so they give you a little information and you're supposed to prepare the balance sheet. We know that assets are supposed to equal liabilities and equity. So you prepare your balance sheet and it doesn't. You know you made a mistake. Something's wrong somewhere. Fine. Leave it alone and go on to the next requirement.
Question,
because in the amount of time it's going to take you to find the mistake you made,
may not be worth it.
You're going to get +1 for correcting that one little mistake. So even though your balance sheet is wrong,
balances.
It's wrong. It's an unbalanced sheet. You may get 9 out of 10 points.
Right.
But if you spend 15 minutes trying to get that 1 point, you again don't answer questions 98, 99, and 100 in the essays. You want to make certain that every requirement has something written.
Right.
Doesn't have to be perfect. But if you have something there, you're going to get some points for everything, and that's how you're going to pass.
Well, I think these are some golden words which you've just spoken, and every candidate should definitely follow these very simple techniques these are. And you know, sometimes on the day of the exam, anxiety kicks in, and you just tend to lose all your common sense. But don't do that. Exam pressure will obviously be there, but just stick to the basics, I feel. And if you stick to the basics, you are definitely, you are on the path to success.
And part of it is if you've studied, and you know if you have or haven't, but if you know you've studied and you've read and you've attended classes and you've answered questions and you've asked questions, you know more than you think you do.
Right.
You're ready. Go in, and yes, there's going to be a question that your mind blanks out. You're going to make a mistake that you shouldn't. You're going to miss a question that you know the answer to. But there's 100 questions. There's the essays. Over all of the time you've been studying, you've learned that. It doesn't matter if you make a stupid mistake on one of the questions. You're going to pass.
Right.
Don't panic. You know more than you think you do. Now, if you didn't study properly, well, there's also no reason to panic because you're not going to pass.
You know it.
We know
already,
that. We know you're not going to pass. Enjoy the time and be done. But if you've prepared, you know it. And it's just, I know it's easier for me to say it than it is for the candidate to do it, but it is just a matter of take a deep breath, calm, confident, you're ready for this.
I think every student should know that the endeavor is not to get a 500 on 500, but a 380 out of 500 is what you require. And you're aiming at 400, 420, you're there.
Yeah, well, 360 does it.
Yeah, 360, sorry.
We don't want to aim for 360.
Yes.
We want to aim a little margin of safety there in the way. But yeah, perfection isn't what we're trying for.
Perfect. Wonderful. I think there's one more key feature of the HOCK LMS, which talks about the final review. So if you could share some light on the USPs of it, please.
We understand that it's a long study process, and you have to remember Section A, page 1, all the way through Section F, the last page. Right. And so we think that you should finish your studying a few weeks before your exam date. And in those last few weeks, we want you to take the mock exams, which are made up of new questions that you haven't seen before. And that's also the time to review. And when you're reviewing, you're going through the book and you're looking at your notes. You're looking at the things you highlighted as you were going through the book. You're reading again the topics that you don't feel perfectly comfortable with. I don't want you to read the book again. There's not time for that, but just scroll through the pages, remember the topics, look at some of the examples that are there, and then do your practice questions every day. A few every day, different topics, kind of keep your mind through all of that. The mock exams. And I know the other question that we get a lot is, what about the day before the exam?
Yes, I was about to ask that question.
Not the last 3 weeks, but the day before the exam. Yes. And I know this may sound kind of weird, but the day before the exam, relax as much as possible.
Yes, I think that's very important.
Sleep as much as possible. And I say, when you're the night before the exam, 1 more hour of sleep is more beneficial than 1 more hour of studying.
Wow.
That hour of sleep is the difference between being alert.
Yes.
4 hours is a long time.
Yes.
To stare at the screen and be focused on that. And so 1 more hour of sleep is much more valuable than 1 more hour of studying. If you go to the exam and you're tired, you're not completely awake, that's not good.
Again, very wise of you to say that.
As much sleep, as much rest as you can get.
Absolutely.
Go into your exam.
That having that peace of mind, having a fresh mind for the day of the exam is very important.
Yeah.
So sometimes, the students tend to get overwhelmed. Oh my God, let me, just pull an all-nighter maybe before the exam.
Don't do that.
Yes.
If you think about it, if you study an extra 2 hours the night before the exam, maybe 1 question will be in those 2 hours, maybe. But if you get 2 hours less sleep than you need, that being tired is going to impact every single question on the exam. So do you want to maybe get 1 more question correct? Or do you want to be tired and not at your best for all 100 questions and the essays? And so, as much as possible, sleep. Relax. Make certain you go into your exam ready. You've eaten properly. You're ready for the exam. You're awake. You're confident. That's the preparation that you need to make in the last day or two to be ready.
That's very wise of you to say that, actually. That don't study, but relax.
Yeah. And again, if you haven't studied up to that point,
then one day will not make a difference.
2 hours isn't going to matter.
Yes.
But if you've studied, you've had your plan, you've had your schedule, you've gone through everything, you've done the mock exams, you've asked questions, you've answered questions, you just need to be ready to show that, and that you need to be as rested as possible.
Perfect. Again, a very naive question coming in from the student's perspective. The mocks that we have on HOCK LMS, do you reckon that they are sufficient for the students to pass the exam? Or would you recommend, going back to the basics, maybe doing more essays?
No, as part of the preparation, the 2 mock exams are enough. Those are new questions that you haven't seen before as part of your studying. And so this is, part of that process is, we want you to sit down for 4 hours and do that.
And
there's the 3 hours for the multiple choice questions, do the essays, because part of that process of taking the exam is sitting there for 4 hours. So we
Holding on to your nerves for those 4 hours.
We need to practice what it's like to sit in the same chair for 4 hours looking at the same computer screen. And so, again, there's a point where doing more questions doesn't help. There's a limit. And I know a lot of students, they want to do as many questions as possible. Well, once you know how to calculate something, doing 15 more questions doesn't help you.
Right.
You spend more time, you spend more energy, you delay the whole study process. And so the goal, again, isn't to get 100%. But once you're comfortable, and that's where we've built a system that has the questions that you need, the practice that you need, the mock exams that you need, the essays. Make certain you go through all of the essays we have so you're prepared for how they ask the essay questions. But as you've been preparing for the MCQs, you've been preparing for the essays as well.
Absolutely.
You're ready.
Like I said, the endeavor should be to get a 360 out of 500 to pass, and not a 500 out of 500.
Well, and it's also something that in the exam, you'll make a mistake.
Yes, absolutely.
Just
Nobody's perfect.
You'll write the numbers incorrectly. You'll put it into the calculator wrong. You'll forget. You won't
We're all
read
humans,
something.
isn't it?
Yeah, but that's okay, because if you're prepared properly, you have that margin of safety. You're going to make a couple of mistakes. You'll still get a 400. Everybody's happy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brian, for your insights. Last question for all the students out there who are still thinking about whether the US CMA qualification is the right fit for them. Is it something that they should start just after, their 12th standard in India, along with their graduation? Or is it something that, will actually give them that next career promotion that they're looking out for? So, in simple terms, why the US CMA qualification in India?
Well, I think it goes back to being practical. And it's knowledge that you need on the job. And that knowledge is the foundation of our career. So whether you're still at university and you want to study CMA at that time, you've been working for a couple of years and you're looking to get ahead, or you're looking to make that next step, having the knowledge that CMA provides is what you need at work. And I know that it may not be exciting, but the knowledge that we have, the things that we know, is the foundation of our career. We need to be able to convert that into actually performing a job and adding value to the company. But if you don't have that foundation, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the tools or the skills, you don't have anything to offer the company. And so CMA provides that foundation. Now, if you're early in your career, it's very possible that in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, you'll get another certification. CMA is excellent in that it opens doors in accounting, finance, consulting. All of those opportunities are there. After you've worked for a few years, your career will start to specialize.
Right.
And so if you end up in internal audit, well, you need to take an internal audit exam. If you end up in corporate finance, there may be a more specialized corporate finance certification you need. And so most people through the course of their career will end up with a couple of certifications. CMA is an excellent first certification. Early in your career, middle stages, then as you know what that specialty needs to be, then you can get that certification. But whether you're university and you're going to be looking for your first job soon, you're in your first job, you're looking for a better job, the tools that you learn, the things that you learn in CMA will give you the foundation to do that.
Wonderful. I think it again all resonates to the fact that it's a comprehensive accounting qualification that is recognized across the globe.
Right.
So you will have opportunities not just opening up in India for you, but across the globe as well.
Right.
Because of the skill set, the 12 core competencies that it teaches. And then definitely that practical orientation of it, that application of it is what makes a key difference between any other standard Indian qualification or a progressive qualification, a fast forward qualification, a more globally recognized qualification like the US CMA.
Well, and what's in CMA? Every business everywhere in the world.
Yes.
You have a budget, you have internal controls, you have to allocate overhead. Doesn't matter where you are. These are the fundamentals of how a business operates.
Absolutely.
And CMA gives you the skills to do that.
So I think that again brings down to a very key point that whether you're going for a job or you're running your own business, the skill set still remains the same.
Yeah.
and still is required for whatever aspect of career you want to, grow yourself into. And that's what really is like the game changer in this particular qualification.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brian, for
pleasure.
your time today.
My pleasure.
I'm sure, you've covered a lot of key aspects that gives and a lot of confidence to the students to help them prepare better for their US CMA qualification. Thank you so much for your time,
My pleasure.
Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.